publishing the night and day because I know it's one of my best work and I want to, actually not sell it across or put it across on some another platform and then get publicity through it. So I'm just reserving it for myself because it's one of my best works. It's a little long one.
Okay.
It's a long poem, like a narrative poem kind of, but the whole thought and the whole idea about it, it's very original and it has directly come from me. So I just don't want to share that whole thought of it.
Well, you shouldn't. I mean, keep some things for the end, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I'm
That's
doing
that.
that.
It's funny
So
how poetry
poetry,
sticks. Like, it just sticks. Like, I do not know why, but there was another poetry in my third standard, which is about this one damsel. And that is still in my head. No, the poetry was called Cheerfulness. And it's still
no,
stuck in
one
my
poetry
head.
when which was like literally stuck in my head was from third standard itself. It was in the first page of our English textbook, and it was about a seed.
Oh, yeah, I remember
The seed
this.
was
Yes. Yes, I totally remember this one. Yeah, they
so
put
the
in the
seed
root, it
was
grows up.
slipping. The seed was slipping. Like even now, if you just give me the start of it, I can actually recite the entire poem. So
I think
uh,
same. I think the even if you give me the same poetry, even I'll remember.
yeah. So in
I
the
also
heart of the
remember the
seed,
picture.
buried deep, oh so deep, the dear little plant lay fast asleep. Yeah, I know it. I still know it. So poetry is something that I think dates
Yeah.
back when I was a kid. It's just like reading. So I have a pretty good history with poetries, and every time I read my own poem, even then I think I have a very different. Every time I read my poem, I have a different perception towards it. Like okay, when I wrote it, I was in a typical mood. I was in a very humorous mood, or probably a little thoughtful mood. But when I read it the another time, it was more of a positivity for me. I could draw optimism from it. So I guess it's the time you read the poem, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So it depends on the mood, not only the mood of the writer, but also the
The
mood
mood of the
of the
person
reader.
who's reading it. True.
Yeah.
Very, very much. I mean, I think it's always how we see it in the end. Mithil, should I start? Mithil?
Yes,
Where is
please.
my first?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another workshop with Skillwise Solutions. This is on the skill of writing a poetry. So, I'm Shraddha Shetty, and I'm the founder of Skillwise Solutions. Skillwise Solutions is a digital marketing agency as well as a learning platform. So, if you are a business owner and if you want to put your uh, but if you want to transform your business from offline to online, do come to us because we have everything that you need and we genuinely care about our work. So, like, definitely it's going to help you grow your business as well. When it comes down to learning, we have a lot of courses that focus on skills. So, if you are somebody who wants to hone a skill, do check out our courses page, do check out our workshops because it's all about that. So today we're talking about poetry, right? And there is something that I've always found very intriguing about poetry is that how it can change the way you think, the way you feel. And a lot of times it is your own interpretation. It's not about what exactly is written, it's about your mood and how you want to take it. If you are in love, every word would like feel that you're in love. But if you're angry, even a simple message would sound like, why is this person shouting? Right? So this is what poetry can do to you. It can get you feelings that you didn't even know existed inside of you. So just to develop that skill and reach out to your perfect message and your perfect poetry to everybody else, we're going to teach you the skill of writing the most amazing poetry. Um, this, of course, this webinar is going to be taken by none other than Swati, who has been a phenomenal writer. She's written so many articles. She's got a blog that you can follow on, and I can like just keep talking about her work because I am one of her biggest fans. So, without any wasting any more time, Swati, I hand this over to you.
Thank you, Shraddha. Okay, hello everyone, welcome. And I'll be talking about poetries, of course, and we'll be learning the art of writing poetries because many times when we want to put our thoughts into words, we have a very deep thought into our mind, but we cannot actually pen it down or write it down into poetry. When we are reading a lot of poems, we feel like, okay, fine, I wish I could write one or probably, just begin something similar to this and we just keep a pen in hand or just think and think and think, and just the paper remains blank. So that should not happen when it comes to writing poems, and that's the reason I'll be sharing with you my techniques about writing poetry. So a little bit, since this whole workshop is about writing poetries, I'll be telling you a little bit about me and poetries. So me and poetries have very much in common, and we really gel well. Okay, so I'm a winner actually of a poetry writing competition held by Open and Round Publisher, where my poem, The Simmering Desires, won the first prize. Again, I'm a runner-up for one of the poetry competition held last year. So me and poetries have a lot going on. So I will be sharing my techniques with you about the poetry. Okay, Shweta? Um, yeah, the PPT.
I think 1 second, Swati, you have to share your screen. Mitul, just allow her the screen share.
Yeah,
Are you able to share your screen?
just let me check. No, I'm not.
Good.
Yeah, I am able to. That's it.
Oh yeah, you'll have to go to the first page.
Yeah, just a moment. Okay. So this is about the art of skill of poetry writing, and I'm a professional writer since 5 years now. And the people who don't know me, I've been writing constantly on social media. I'm a social media writer. I'm a content writer, and my love is for fiction writing and poetry. So since my love is for fiction writing and poetry, I'm actually conducting this workshop. So before we step into writing poetries, we need to understand the types of poetries. Okay, so basically, once you know what are the types of poetries, only then you can actually write a poetry. Because if you don't know the type of poetry, you will just go haywire as to which form to choose to write a poem. So just will quickly go through what are the forms of poetry. So first is the blank verse. Okay, so what is a blank verse? A blank verse is basically a poem that does not rhyme, but it has a rhythm to it. Okay, so when we are reading a particular poem that does not rhyme but has a rhythm, it is a blank verse. Okay, so you can choose this particular form for your poetry writing. Next is the rhyme poetry. We all know of this poetry. The Humpty Dumpty, this particular form which ends. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, then he had a great fall. So wall and fall are rhyming. So this is kind of a rhyme poetry. So most of the poems, most of the beginners in poetry go for this kind of form, this particular form of poetry, because it's easier and it gives you a feeling of a poem basically. So yeah, this is a rhyme poetry. Next is free verse. Okay, so free verse is something that people usually confuse with blank verse. So free verse and blank verse are totally different, because free verse does not rhyme, nor does free verse has a rhythm. So blank verse is something which has a rhythm but does not rhyme. Free verse does not rhyme, and nor does it have a rhythm. Okay, so yeah, so this is an example of a free verse where if you can read, there is nothing is rhyming in it, nor you have any sort of rhythm attached to it. It is just a plain poem. Free verse is usually attempted and usually returned by experts, the people who are really full of thoughts and full of depth. They go for free verses, and they go for writing free verses. Next is sonnets. Sonnets are very famous, and a very famous poet. So William Shakespeare, he had his core writing into sonnets. Sonnets is basically a 14-line poem that has a rhythm and a rhyme attached to it. And sonnets revolve basically around the concept of love. So whenever you read a sonnet, you have this feeling that it has something to do with love and the feeling of love or the emotion of love. Okay, so haiku. Haiku is originally from Japan, and haiku is a very short poem, and basically consisting of 5, 7, and 5. It ends in 3 lines. it has a philosophical background attached to it. So whenever you want to denote something philosophically, when you want to say something and you give an example of something else, then you usually use haiku. So it has a very deeper meaning attached to it. So the form of this poem is 5 syllables in the first line, second 7 syllables in the second line, and the third line has 5 syllables again. Okay, so coming back to syllabus, syllabus is are basically the sounds or the stressed words into a sentence or into a line. Okay, so I'll be talking about syllabus in detail in the coming part of the workshop. So until now, we have gone through, first is blank verse, second is free verse, third is the sonnets, and fourth is haiku. So these are the form of poems. These are the basic form of poem. Basically, there are many forms, but these are the main forms that we usually follow. So next is technical terms in the poetry. Now, when we want to write a poetry, we cannot just go writing anything and everything that comes to our mind. We need to understand some technical terms into poetry, which actually will help us or our thoughts to flow in a better fashion. Okay. So first is the syllabus. What are syllabus? Basically, we have this vowels, right? Okay, so syllabus are basically English words have this clear syllabus. We can usually divide words into syllabus. Now, when you talk about angel and complete, you emphasize on some words, like you stress on some words, and you unstress or don't stress on some words. So those are syllabus. Now, coming on to the technicalities of syllabus, if you consider the vowels, okay, so vowels are A, E, I, O, U. So when you talk about moonlight, moonlight has two vowels in it, that is O. But when I'm talking about moonlight, it is considered only once, like the double O is considered as one syllable. Okay, so when you're counting the syllables, you have to count the sounds of the vowels that are there into the sentence. Okay, so whenever talking about moonlight, so it is like moon light. Light is E is also coming like light. So that is the another syllable. So there are basic in the word moonlight, there are two syllables. So that's how you count the syllable. You count the syllables on the basis of the stress sounds, on the basis of the vowel sounds. Okay. Next is these are the syllables. So when you're writing a poem or a poetry, to be precise, the syllabus part comes off very important when you are writing a haiku, because haiku follows a specific pattern of 575. So when you're writing haiku, syllabus are very important. Like you have to count the syllabus, and when you're counting the syllabus, this technique comes off handy, like the vowel technique. You have to count the vowel sounds into your words or into your sentences, and you can actually know how many syllabus are there. Okay. Next is enjambments. Okay. So when you go through a poem, now enjambments, if I'm talking about enjambments are basically when there is a one sentence and I write that sentence in breaks. Okay, so when I write that sentence in breaks, it is enjambment. When you're talking about the last sunbeam lightly falls, so the last sunbeam, this whole entire sentence is one sentence, but I'm breaking it down into separate lines so that the rhythm and the stress level or the division of the sentence is done properly. You might have seen online also, when people write poems, they don't use punctuations enough, but they use a second line to write a particular sentence, or to complete a sentence, not complete a sentence actually, they use a second line to for the continuation of that particular sentence. So when that particular thing happens, it is called enjambment. It is to stress your particular idea. Now this, in this particular sentence, it's like the last sunbeam lightly falls from the finished of Sabbath on the pavement here and there beyond it is looking. So when you're talking about this is an entire sentence, but I've broken it down into sections so that my whole idea is conveyed properly to the reader. So many a times when you're writing a poem, enjambments are very necessary and very much in trend nowadays, because when you write in a poetry in that form, people can understand that it is some sort of a poetry and your message is conveyed very easily. Next is a rhyme scheme. Now this, which actually dates back to the time we were in school, so I'll just revise it through quickly. Now rhyme scheme is when you look at a particular line in a poem, look at its last word. Now here, if you see, the last word is ABCB. What is the rhyme scheme? Okay, so if I'm talking about the poem Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. A wall and fall are rhyming. So I'll put up A next to it. So this is like a rhyming scheme. How we have all actually done this in school, but I hardly actually I do not know if anyone remembers about it. So so this is about the rhyme scheme. And next part is the tone. Now this tone is very important, as we were talking about this before the workshop actually started. It was about, the tone is about basically the mindset in which a writer starts writing a poem. Okay, so the tone can be humorous, it can be cynical, it can be sarcastic, it can be happy, sad, angry, uh, thoughtful, anything. It is the mindset in which a writer or a writer starts writing a poem. Rather than a mindset, you can also say that it is something that a writer chooses to write a poem in. Okay, if I want to talk about positivity, or if I want to talk about loneliness, so if I'm feeling in a particular way, I'll actually start talking about it in a particular way. So the tone is something that when you read the entire poem, you understand the tone of it. Okay, so that's about it. So before we start on how to write poems, just let's quickly revise to the technical terms. There's syllables, there are enjambments, rhyme, and tone, of course. So syllables I've already covered. Enjambments, yes. Rhyme scheme, and the tone is the mindset or the way the poet wants a particular poem to be written. Okay. Shraddha, do we have any questions until now? Because these are little technical terms. So if anyone has any question, I would really
Right.
love. Yeah.
Yeah. So far, no questions. But okay. So Swati, when you write a poem, what kind
Yeah.
of a syllable do you constantly choose, or what kind of tone do you usually go for? Or
Usually go for a thoughtful kind of a tone and a little
okay.
philosophical term. And I use a lot of metaphors. Like I want to mean something. I want to mean something, but I'll demonstrate it by a thing, or by something abstract. Like there's one poem which I was talking about, Night and Day. That's my own poem, right? So in that poem, love is actually explained. The emotion of love is explained through night and day. The whole concept is, I'll just break down the concept to you, and you can go and read the poem actually. So the concept is basically when there is dawn and dusk. Okay, so these are the two times of the entire 24 hours where the day and night actually meet. You can see the combination of day and night. You cannot even tell if it's a day or if it is a night.
Right.
So it is like two times a day, and it's like these night and day are two lovers basically, and they fall in love, and it's their conversation. It's the conversation that's happening between them. And the night and day are like, I think the night is very much what do you call, conservative, or no to it, and the day is like, no, I love you and I cannot leave you. Okay, and the night is like, no, I am leaving, because there is no way we can combine, because if we combine together, then the entire human race will go, like there would be nothing to, nothing left on this planet, or nothing to look forward to, and this entire uh, what do you call, the world will just come to an
Collapse.
end, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah.
collapse, come to an end. And then the day is like, okay, fine, if we really love each other so much, we can work a way out through it. When there will be two times in a day, two times in entire 24 hours that will meet, and those will be the most beautiful time of the entire 24 hours. Like those times would be very what do you call, praised by the humans themselves. Like they'll actually see the beauty of the combination of the day and night, and that's how they come to a point. They don't end up sacrificing their love, but they come to a point and they come to a mutual consent. Like, okay, this is the time when we'll be together, and this is the time when we'll experience love, and because of our love, people will also experience the beauty of it. So this entire concept was originated from me. So I just didn't want to lose it anywhere. So it is a very philosophical and a very depth oriented kind of a poem. So it is not very shallow. It has a deeper meaning. Like we were talking about, you know, when every time we read a poem, we have
Right.
something new to tell and we have
Exactly.
something new to learn from it. So I think this is one of those poetries where you know actually you can learn every time you read
Read,
it from a
right.
different
It
conception. Yeah.
sounds so beautiful. It sounds so, it's
Yeah, you should actually go and have a look. I will actually love it
definitely
because it's my personal favorite. So every time I write a particular poem, I usually go for a thoughtful or a philosophical thing attached to it. I use a lot of metaphors because people who read poems are basically people who like poems.
right.
People who don't like poems never go for reading poems. Matlab, voluntarily they'll never go to read a poem as it. But
Right.
people who like poems, only those people will come and read poems. So they come for depth. They come for something that is beyond what is shown. You know, the unseen kind of. So when this is there, you have to give them what they want, and that's how it works, I guess. So
You
yeah,
definitely answered my question. So yes,
yeah.
and I'm looking forward to read that one.
Okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so I just rushed through this all things because these are not actually the part of the workshop. But since we are writing a poem, we need to understand a little bit of what the poetry is all, what the poetry is formed of, and what it contains in itself. So that's the whole point. Okay. So next would be we'll start how to start writing poems, basically. Okay, so creation of vivid imagery. So now before I start this, this is something which I religiously follow, and this is one technique which comes very handy when I don't have anything at my disposal. Anything I don't have, what we can say, any thoughts in my mind how to go about it. I'm completely blank about any particular topic. So this is where I actually started. So creation of vivid imagery, which is the X technique. Okay, moving ahead. Okay, so let me explain to you. This is a little like it's a very too small in size. So this is an X technique. So when you see an X technique, whatever your main idea is, you put it in the center. Okay, you put it in the center, whatever your main idea is. For example, if my main idea is limbo, you know, state of being in a limbo. So you can see on the right hand side, the state of being in a limbo. Now, when I'm talking about it, it will be like what it smells like being in a limbo. So it smells like the following points which are mentioned there. Then what it feels like, what it sounds like. So we have to feel the entire X part by the describing words of how you think being in a state of limbo is. For example, if I'm talking about morning, okay, so when I'm talking about morning, it will be basically what you can say, yeah, how it smells like. Morning smells fresh. Morning smells like lavender. Morning smells like what you can say, yeah,
Coffee.
people you can so yeah, morning smells like coffee, of course. Then it sounds like chirpy because birds are chirping around, and what it feels like, it feels warm. It feels what you can say, it feels warm. It feels like a start of something, you know. It feels, you feel energetic towards morning. So these are all the adjectives that come up with when you're talking about a particular word. So there is nothing like in this world that any topic you have will have this four divisions in it. Any topic you choose, if you choose about morning, if you choose about limbo, if you choose about love, if you choose about hate, if you choose about anger, any topic you choose, any topic you brainstorm and put it into the center, this but that particular thing will have this four divisions in it. What it smells like, what it looks like, what it feels like, and fourth one is what it sounds like. Okay, yeah, so this four divisions will always be there with you. Okay, so now let's begin. with starting the poem, writing a poem. Okay. So when you're writing a poem, it's very important for us to actually have something called as a basic starting point. Okay. Where you actually start your poem, writing your poem. So when you sit down and you're like, okay, I'm writing a poem, but what are you writing a poem on? This is a this is a basic start. Okay. You need to have something in your mind to start writing a poem. It can be an emotion. It can be a thing. Okay, I want to write a poem on coffee. Okay, I love coffee. I'm writing a poem on coffee, of course. I love tea. I'm writing a poem on tea. Okay, I love chicken biryani. I'm writing a poem on chicken biryani. So, of course, there should be something that you need to start from. So, without that particular point, you really cannot go ahead. So, you really need to sit down, brainstorm your starting point, come down to one single thought. Okay, this is my core idea of starting. Like my poem will be about this itself. Okay, so when I was talking about the night and day, okay, those night and day were characters in my poem, but the core idea was about love. Okay, so when I'm talking about this poem, the simmering desires, which I talked about, like earned got rewards for, like I was rewarded for, and that particular poem was around, the character was coffee, but it was about passion. So my passion for coffee, and then my passion for something else, and then it coming down to coffee eventually. So there was this twist in the tail and the end. So you need to have a starting point. So you have to brainstorm and have a starting point. Now, if you are a very beginner into poetries, or writing poems, I would suggest that you take a basic thing like probably we can, for today's session we can, or today's webinar, we can go about taking example of night, because night is something that we, today's generation, can all relate to. We are awake the entire night, maybe on our phones or maybe doing something else and browsing through the internet, this or that. So let's take the main focus of today's webinar would be night. Now what I'll do is I'll just go to Google. Now search words describing night. Okay, words describing night. Oh, when I go ahead and search for words describing night, I'll get a tons of words on Google that actually come up, that will actually define night for me. So I'll just write down all those words, not even a single. I won't skip a single word. I write down all those words, and I'll make a note of it, of course. Then now what this particular thing comes into picture, where you have to choose the poem's form. Okay, so it's what you want your poem to be. Do you want your poem to be a rhyme poem, or you want it to be a blank verse, or you want it to be a free verse, or haiku, or a limerick, or anything else? So, since if you are a beginner, you can go for a rhyme poem. So for today's webinar, we are taking an example of a rhyme poem, because since we all are beginners here, including me, so we'll be taking an example of rhyme poem. Okay. Now, what I can do is I can go and read for inspiration. Okay. So we'll be now, since we come from a generation where we have this thing in very handy, like, okay, you just go to Google, type poems, rhyming poems, or poems that rhyme, and any famous poet you want to, and just read for inspiration. Just read 2 3 poems, get an idea of how it is written, the form of the sentences, because when you're writing a normal sentence, the way you frame the sentence is different, and different than the one when you're writing a poem. So when you're writing a poem, the sentences are in the form of inversion. Okay. When I went, for example, if last night I went to a cafe full of people. Okay, so what when I'm writing a poem, it will be like full of people I went last night into a cafe. So it is an inversion. Okay, so I can write it in the form of enjambments, not in a single line, but break it into not in a single sentence, but break it into lines. So yeah, so we can choose your poem form and style, how you want to write it, the way you want to write it. Okay. Now, yeah, of course, read for inspiration, and then you have to start writing. Now, when you're starting to write, very important, very, very important, is write for yourself. Don't write it for anybody else. Write for yourself. Okay. If you are okay with it, just do it. If you're not okay with it, change it. Just start writing for yourself. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, doesn't matter. 2 days back, I just tweeted one thing, just by going through this, I just remembered it, I recollected it, that when we start writing, it is the bad stuff. It's the crap stuff that we write, and we think it is good stuff until we start actually writing. We start writing good, but until the time we start writing good, we think of the crap stuff as good stuff only, and that works for us. So whatever works for you, you start writing for yourself. Doesn't matter what others think or anybody in your circle thinks. So if you're okay with it, just be okay with it. Now, this is also a very important step. Keep it. Now take your poem and read it aloud. Okay. Even if you're writing it digitally, I will tell you my secret that even if we are in this digital world, I'm still old school, and I'm carrying an entire paper of this PPT also with me because I'm an old school person, and I write like to see it in black and white. Unless I see it in black and white, okay, so that's my thing as a writer, that unless I see it in black and white, it doesn't register in my mind. Okay. It same goes for the books for me, because I'm not a very Kindle lover. I am more of a hard copy lover kind of a thing. So that is my thing. So this is also one of my thing, that once I'm done with writing a poem, maybe 2 paragraphs or 3 paragraphs, I just read the poem aloud to my own self. When it is when it is heard by yourself, or when you hear it and when it gets registered in your mind, you know that something is wrong with the poem. Because it's your poem, you will definitely know that something is wrong. So reading aloud is very important. Whenever you write a poem, if you are writing it digitally, remember to write it in black and white and then start reading it. Okay. Then, okay. Now, this is also very important. Whenever you write a poem, keep it for marination. Okay. So, basic time for keeping it for marination is overnight. Write a poem, keep it for marination overnight, wake up the next morning and read it again. You will definitely find out what is wrong in the poem, if at all there is wrong in the poem. You will be like, okay, this flow is not correct. Okay, this is something that is not matching. Okay, so this is not rhyming, or this word doesn't suit here. It will automatically come to you. Just keep it there for the entire night and wait for the next. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, whoever this is, please mute yourself.
Okay. Then finally, you have to revise your poem, make the changes that you feel are necessary in the poem. Okay, so the poem which I'll be sharing with you all, I'll be writing using the X technique that I shared. I'll be actually doing that poem here. I'll be writing that poem. So that poem, while writing that poem, it was very much essential for me to change a few words, because they were rhyming, but they were not just going with the flow of it. So what I did and how I did about it, I'll just share my experience with it. So yeah, so let's revise it once again. First of all, you have to, very much necessary that you have to start with something. You don't need to have a core idea. Maybe it is a night, morning, an emotion, a thing, anything. Then you have to collect the adjectives. So simply go to Google, describing words. Okay, so if you're talking about night, describing words for night. That's it. And whatever words come, you have to just jot it down. Okay. Now choose your poem's form and style. So for today, I'm choosing the poem to be a rhyme poem. I want a poem to be a rhyme poem, and the style of the poem, of course. Then I'll read for inspiration, whoever my favorite poet is, or whatever poems I find on the Google for on the Google search. I'll just read for the inspiration of it. Then actually I'll start writing, and I'll write for myself, not for anybody else. I'll just write for myself. If it feels good, it feels good. If it is not feeling good for someone else, doesn't matter, because it feels good for you. Then you have to read your poem aloud, because you need to hear what you have written. And it's very important, because when you hear what you have written, you will automatically understand, okay, this is right here, this is wrong here, and you will make necessary changes. After that, again, keep the poem for kind of marination overnight, because same goes for food. Like whatever goes for food goes for writings as well. So when you marinate your writings, you actually the product is really good, the outcome is really good. So keep it for a night, wake up the next morning, just read it, and make the necessary changes wherever you feel like. Again, read the poem aloud. Then you'll automatically think, okay, this word is not fitting here, so I'm changing the word. This word is not fitting here, so I'm changing the word. So revise your poem. Okay. So going the next slide. Okay. So night. So this is what I did for the night. Um, okay. So when I'm talking about night, first is like what it looks like. Okay. So we all know what night looks like. It looks dark. It looks bleak. It is long. It is eternal. Sometimes it looks like never ending, so it's eternal. And sometimes it's vibrant also. So what happened is when I went to discarding words for night, whatever the list was, I just classified those particular words into these four sections. I did nothing else. Okay, so first word was dark. So dark is something that it look like. So I put it in the column of look like. Okay, then the next word probably was gloomy. So gloomy is not something that looks, it feels. Okay, so I put it in the column of feel like. Okay, so the next word was probably mist. So mist is something that you kind of smell it at times. So I put it in the column of smell like. So what I did was I just segregated those describing words, the list of those describing words into these four columns. That's it. Okay. So yeah. So coming back, it feels like windy, gloomy, cold, anxious, blank. Okay, so these are all the adjectives that a night look like. It sounds like silent. Okay, so night is quite sounds like silent is kind of ironical and a little bit of what you call antithesis basically. Okay, so these are way technical terms and these are poetic devices which we'll be talking about in the end of the like towards the end of the workshop. Like when you combine two opposite words into a single thought, it is basically ironical and it's a figure of speech and when you combine two opposite words into a single sentence it's antithesis. So that's what happens when you want to convey something in a poetic fashion. So yeah, so it sounds like silent. So we're talking about sound also when we are talking about silence also. So and then it sounds terrifying, it sounds quiet, it's dull and it's dreary. Okay, then what it smells like serene. Okay, that is pure. It smells a little soggy. So everyone who has a good smelling sense can know what soggy smells like. It's something that you get a smell during the rain season, basically. So it smells like that. It smells mist. It smells of mist. It smells a little rainy, and it's also damp. Okay, so that's how the night is divided into four columns. Okay, so any questions until now, like something that you have not understood? Anybody so
Uh,
far?
no questions from me as well. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of enjoying this because
Okay. 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 Yeah. So
uh,
here's about the next technique. So what I did was I just took out the describing words from Google and I segregated or classified into those words into these four columns. That's how simple it is. It is not at all difficult. Okay. Once I'm done with the segregation of the words into these four columns, I'll just go on to my next thing is start writing a poem, basically. Okay. So you want to choose where you want to start from. So you want to start from looks like, you want to start from smells like, you want to start from feels like or sounds like. Okay. So yeah. So first down, walking down cold dark night. Now if you see, cold, dark were already there in that particular X. Okay. So when I wrote this words cold and dark, it is like, okay, I want to include this into my poem. So I was walking down and how was the night? It was cold and dark. So walking down cold dark night, it automatically has become poetic ready. Like the first two lines already you know that okay, this is something that is has to do with poems because it has added a different taste to it by adding those words. Walking down cold dark night with thoughts in my head and doubts in my mind. Okay. Now what I did is basically night walking down a cold dark night. What happens when you walk down a cold dark night? Okay, when you're walking lonely down a cold dark night, there is a person out here who does that often. Medul, will you like to share something on this, like walking down a cold dark night?
walking down a cold dark night. I actually,
Because
yeah, go for it.
so he we actually talk about it, like, okay, walking down cold night, dark night, what happens is, sharing the experiences, basically what happens. So what happens is you have a lot of thoughts in your head and you have a lot of doubts in your mind, so you just go down, walk lonely on a just particular dark night, and just go for a stroll and walk in the
Actually, one of
evening sun and everything. Okay,
self-reflection.
sorry.
It's one of the best time for self-reflection.
Exactly. I wanted you to just point it out, basically. So yeah, so what happens is, so thoughts in my head and doubts in my mind. Okay, so now if you see the first particular stanza or first particular paragraph is has a particular rhythm attached to it. Walking down a cold dark night with thoughts in my head and doubts in my mind. Okay, so this is particular rhythm that I was talking about. If I want to write a poem, I need to have a rhythm attached to it. Now, this comes from reading your poems from inspiration. Once you read a lot of poems from inspiration, this will automatically flow. Your thoughts will automatically flow. Okay. Now, the next is, okay, so now one stanza is over. Like, okay, I was walking down and I had thoughts in my mind, and I had also, thoughts in my head, and I had doubts also. So, what next can I talk about? Okay, so the next particular description will come handy. Okay, when I'm talking about the mist, uh, what is the mist? Mist is basically a combination of something as well as a little fog. Also, I can add up in to make it a little dramatic and add a drama, a sense or a drama value to it. So the mist, the fog, the rainy damp. Okay, so when I'm talking about the mist and the fog, and it has probably just rained, so everywhere it's just damp, and that particular rainy feeling is still active. Okay, now what happens? This rainy, particular rain feeling for me as a person, at times it is a little dull and a little bleak for me as a person, and sometimes it's fine, rains are good, but depending upon the mood, it's sometimes they are bleak, they are dull. Sometimes I don't want to look at I want to look at the sunshine, but it is not there, and it's very cloudy and it's very dull. So for me, rain as an emotion would come as bleak, as dull. So what happens is, how is that mist and fog, it is matching the bleak of my mind's condescend. So what I basically did here was, when I wrote mind in the earlier paragraph, I went ahead and I searched for rhyming words for mind. Okay, rhyming words for mind. When I wrote this, automatically the words that rhymed with mind came up in the section. Okay. Uh, then when I want to choose something that is dull, what will be the best word that will go with mind? So I went with the word condescend, because condescend is something that associates with feeling low. So that's why when I want to use the word bleak, it has to match something similar, and it has to go with the mind ka rhyming also. So what I did was, I wrote the first stanza. I took up the word mind. I went ahead. I searched for rhyming words of mind on Google. Whatever words came up, I chose that was matching the bleak. Okay, that was matching the bleak or dullness, like how I was feeling a little low. So yeah, when I'm feeling a little low, the word condescend and mind goes together. So when I read it in total now, so how it is, let's read it. Walking down cold dark night with thoughts in my head and doubts in my mind, the mist, the fog, the really damp, matching the bleak of my mind's condescend. So the flow goes. Okay. So the mind and condescend is rhyming. They probably are not rhyming directly, but they are rhyming on the rhythmic level. So we can we can have the liberty of choosing it. Okay. Now moving ahead, what happens? What happens when we talk walking down? The night grows. Okay. What do you mean by night grows? The night doesn't actually grow. It is a personification, it's a figure of speech, basically. So as the night grows, what happens is into a sleepless eternity. Now these two words, sleepless and eternity, which were already there. So looking at those words, I came up with this. When sleepless and eternity, when can it be eternity or eternal? When it is too long, never ending kind of. So I have to explain how it is never ending. So basically, when a night grows, okay, so as a night grows into a sleepless eternity, I'm not able to sleep, and it is looking like it is going to be eternal. It is not, it is never ending. Okay, quiet, dull, a dreary subtlety. Okay, it is quiet. These are also the adjectives which are already there. Quiet, dull, a dreary. Dreary is also already mentioned here. Dreary, dreary, subtlety. Now, what I did here was I just went and searched for a word that is matching or that is rhyming with eternity. I went to Google rhyming words for eternity. I came up with a list of words. Okay. Now, quite dull. And what was that? Dreary. How was it? The night was subtle. Okay, it was not very harsh on me. It was subtle, but it was dull, and it was exerting and exfoliating kind of a pain on me. But it was very subtle on me, not very harsh. Okay, so I took the word subtlety here. Okay, so it is matching with eternity and it's going well. It's rhyming with eternity. Okay, so let's read loud. As the night grows into a sleepless eternity, quite dull, a dreary subtlety. Okay, so it's quiet, the night is dull, it's quite dreary. Okay, it's dreary also, but it is subtle. It is not very harshly dreary. It's subtly dreading me. It's brooding me, subtly doing its torture on me. Okay, so now, until now, the night has grown. Okay, so we are already in the middle of the night. Okay, so now what will happen ahead is we need to end the poem. Now, since it's a four stanza poem, we need to give it a conclusion as a person. Like as I was walking down, what was the entire thing that came up to my mind by the end of the particular feeling, like how I felt, what I felt. Okay, so that is going to be the end of the poem. So every time the end stanza would be something that would be your conclusion or the way you feel, or probably it can be a twist in the tail, or it can be an end to what you have started. Okay, so it dawns on me nearing the end dead. So now what I did here was, if it was a normal sentence, it would be a dead end. Okay, but I did not write the word dead end. I just twisted the words because I wanted end in the I wanted basically dead in the end. So I just twisted the words because I wanted to do something with the rhyming thing. Okay, so I chose the liberty, poetic liberty that we call it, and I just replaced the words end and dead. Okay, it dawns on me nearing the end dead. Okay, so what it dawns, what I feel towards the end of the night, how do I feel? What do I feel? So it dawns on me nearing the end dead. What it dawns, nothingness is forever. Okay, what I feel like nothingness is something that is forever going to stay with me. Nothingness is forever, and togetherness is something that is a mere illusion uncanny. Okay, so dead and unkent and condescend basically rhymes. So that's how these rhyme schemes work. Okay, so togetherness is something that is an illusion basically for me. At the end of the night, I'm thinking that okay, nothingness is forever and togetherness is an illusion. Okay, unkent and it's full of doubt, and it's not something that I'm very sure of. Okay, so let's read the poem again and see if the flow is proper or not. Okay, walking down cold dark night with thoughts in my head and doubts in my mind, the mist, the fog, the rainy damp, matching the bleak of my mind's condescend. As the night grows into a sleepless eternity, quite dull, a dreary subtlety, it dawns on me nearing the end dead. Nothingness is forever, togetherness a mere illusion, uncanny. So if you see, the poem is rhyming, okay, The poem has a rhyme, the poem has a rhythm, and the poem is giving you something throughout. Okay, so I was walking in the first, then I went through it, then the entire emotions that I felt with the describing words that were already in the X technique that we mentioned. All the words are taken from here, nowhere else. Okay, so I explained the emotion using these words itself, and towards the end of it, I explained, like, I actually concluded it by how I'm feeling towards the end of the night. Okay, so any questions, like,
I
from
actually have
anyone?
a question. I have a very, very interesting question for you.
Okay,
So you have written the mist, the fog, the rainy damp, right?
right.
Uh, even if we not do not take the word the rainy damp, the mist and the fog can actually be his thoughts as well, right? Doesn't have to be the climate, because if he's actually in doubts, your
Mhm.
brain tends to be really foggy with thoughts. So
Yeah, so,
can you like relate it to that and not just the climate around?
like,
I mean,
what can you write instead of that? I would
no,
want you to think.
I'm not asking you to change it. I'm asking you to. I'm telling
Uh-huh.
you, like, what if a person is interpreting it differently, like instead of the way
It
you're
is fine. It is
writing.
fine. That is what a poem is supposed to do. Like,
So
I
because
wrote it
when
in some other.
yeah, like the way you wrote it was probably defining the climate, and the way
Yes,
I
yes.
see it is basically this person's state of mind.
Yeah, but then I wrote it for the same reason, that his mind is the same the way the weather is. It's matching that. So these both
Okay,
things are matching, like the his state of mind and the climate around, like, are matching each other. So that's the reason I use those words here. The mist, the fog, the rainy dam. Okay, so how is it? It's dull, and it is matching my mind's bleak also.
so
So that's
basically
how
the
it is.
inner art out here is to explain 2 to 3 things in simple words, but going around it, right? The way I
Yes,
see it.
yes, it is, because you have to explain your state of mind uh, using the
It's
main
around
core
you.
idea,
Yeah.
and the core idea, and you can use it using this describing words, because that's the reason we come up with this X technique, because
Right.
if you have X technique handy, you have a lot of words to play with. Okay, so you can fill up those gaps with these words. Now it
Right.
becomes very easy. It becomes quite easy to write a poem with this X technique. So that's the whole idea of the creation of vivid imagery.
Yeah,
So
that
yeah,
makes sense. Yes.
yeah. So this is about it. And so any questions? That's it.
Uh, I don't think any other questions. It's just that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah. So now some poetic devices, of course.
Right.
Yeah. So does anyone here know about poetic devices? Like, what are poetic devices basically? Like, we had it in when we were in school. So
That is a no from
mhm.
Skillwise Solutions. It says no, he doesn't know what a poetic device is.
Okay,
Rohan
let's
says yes.
go to Rohan. Of course, he will know what is poetic device, because he
It,
is
so
someone who is
poetic
in
device is
poetry.
basically a figure of speech. I mean, the different kinds of figures of
Yes,
speech that we use. Okay.
yes.
What is the email ID? Actually, I
Okay.
have sent it on
Okay,
your
we're getting
RBL
some mails.
WhatsApp.
Yeah, one second.
Yeah.
That's from my end. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So, okay, so rhymes are, we all know what are rhymes, right? Now towards the end of the sentences, we have this fall, wall, downtown. So these are rhymes basically. Now what we did with mind and consent was a rhyme. I wanted a rhyme with mind and consent, so I did that. Now, so rhymes can be internal rhymes also. Okay. Uh, uh, Down the town I went around. So it is a single sentence,
Yeah.
but there are rhymes in this particular single sentence also. So down the town I went around. So that is something that is rhymed. Okay. Next is repetition. Repetition we all know of.
Same
We are
words.
repeating the words. Yeah. So oh God, please give me this. So it's like that. So it's repetition basically to heighten the poetic beauty of the entire poem. So we use it to for the enhancing the poetic beauty basically. Onomatopoeia is the way things sound. The meow of the cat, and the croaking of the frog probably, or the ding of the bell, and the ring of the phone. So this whole idea of sounds is basically onomatopoeia. Okay, so next is metaphor. This is my favorite and my personal favorite, basically. So metaphor is something when I'm combining two things. Now here also, when this particular night poem that we just explained, when I combined the night with my state of mind. The way night was and the way my state of mind was, the both were combined and both were compared to each other without using the word like and as. Okay, so when you're writing a poem into metaphor, like poems are usually into metaphor. So the when you're giving an idea, you're giving a thought that actually has to do something deeper on a deeper at a deeper level. So when you're combining two things without using the words like and as, is basically metaphor. So the lion is brave. Okay, so the lion is what? The lion is brave. So lion is being compared to the quality of being brave, but we are not using the words like and as here. So lion is brave. Okay. He is as brave as lion. So what am I doing here? I'm comparing him to a lion by using the word as. Okay. So when I'm using the word like and as for comparison, it is direct comparison and it is simile, which you can see here on the right hand side. So metaphor and simile are comparisons basically. But when you're when it is a simile, you use the word like and as for comparison, and it is a direct comparison. Whereas in metaphor, you don't use the word like and as, and it is an indirect comparison. Okay. So now next is hyperbole. Okay, so hyperbole is basically exaggeration. So what this mid Bollywood songs were full of, मैं तेरे लिए चांद तोड़ के लाऊंगा, तारे तोड़ के लाऊंगा, kind of. So that is like, it's hyperbole. So it is quite exaggerated in its way, to basically heighten the poetic beauty, to enhance the poetic, what you call it, poetic depth of it. Okay, so now the poetry is, you are organizing the stanzas into a break, like the enjambments basically. So when you're doing this, it is basically a poetry. Like haiku is not something that rhymes, but it is divided into three sections without being rhymed. Okay, so when I'm writing something into enjambments or pauses in a particular line, then those are called poetries. Okay. Then next is rhythm, which we talked about. Rhythm is something that a poem has even if it doesn't have a rhyme. Many times poem does not have a rhyme, but it has a rhythm. Okay. So now this night poem, if you see it, it had rhymes in it, but it also had a rhythm attached to it. Okay. So that rhythm in a poem is very important. If you are writing a poem with a precise meter, so when you're writing a poem with a precise meter, this rhythm part is very important. Okay. Now figurative language. Okay, so figurative language is when you compare things with by using different words attached to it. Okay, so when you're comparing things with different things attached to it, it is figurative language. Then simile, I've already explained. Simile is direct comparison. If I'm comparing something directly, one thing to the other thing, it is called as simile. Okay. Now personification, another very important thing. If you see the example of night poem itself, when we said the night grows, night is something that is non-living. That is, you cannot actually. It does not have a living soul attached to it. You can say it is non-living, and we are giving it a human quality. Basically, it is not human. Okay, night is not a human being, and we are giving it a human quality of growing. Okay, so night grows. So this is an example of personification, because the night does not actually end up growing. If you see it in a literal language or a literal fashion, it does not end up growing. But in order to write a poem, we think that okay, the night grows. Grows means it advances. It grows a deeper. It at deeper level. Alliteration is basically the repetition of the first. What do you call it? Not the first letter, the first sound of a sentence. Uh, slowly, steadily, simmering desires. You can talk about that. So the sound of S is repeated. So when the first sound is repeated, it is basically alliteration. Okay. So deep, dreary, desolate, deep, dreary, desolate, dead, were my feelings. So what is happening here? The sound of D is being repeated. So when this happens, it gives a particular what you can say tone to your poem. So when that tone is attached to your poem, it is for the poetic beauty. It is to heighten the poetic beauty. Then you can say the prose. Okay, writing organized into sentences and paragraphs. When your writing is properly written into a paragraph form, it is a prose. So these are all the poetic devices which are there, which you can use at your level. Like you can use wherever you want to. It is not a compulsion to use these poetic devices. Many a times it happens with me, and I'm sure it will happen to all of you who will end up writing poems. That whenever you write a poem, you will end up using the poetic device, and then you'll understand, oh, this is a poetic device. Okay, so this is what usually happens, and this is very common because when I wrote As the Night Grows, I did not think of writing a personification. I thought of writing As the Night Grows, and then I realized, oh, this is a personification. Okay, so now if you read the poem, you will find a lot of figure of speech in that particular poem, but I had no intentions of writing any entire poem with any figure of speech. But when you are bound to write a poem, things happen. So don't stress much onto my personal suggestion would be, don't stress onto the figure of like the poetic devices, except the rhyme and rhythm. Like rhyme and rhythm are very important. Rhyme, when you are writing a rhyming poem, rhyme is very important, and rhythm is quite important because the flow should be good. The poems, when you're reading the poem, when you're reading it aloud, the flow should be very well. The words should fit into one another properly. There should be a proper rhythm attached to the poem. So these two poetic devices should be taken care of. The rest, it's absolutely your choice to write or not to write. And many a time it will happen not with you without you knowing about it also. So yeah. So Shraddha, any questions? Like, are you getting questions until now?
No. So Swati, what is actually the difference between a song and a poem? I mean, I get that
Song and a
point
poem.
that it's supposed to be rhyming, right? I mean, even songs are rhyming. You can put a music to it, but if you just keep the lyrics and if you compare a
Yeah.
poem, what is the difference between them?
There is not much difference between it because if you see a song, now there is a lot of repetition in the song. If you see a song, like there's this particular sentences are repeated because you need it that in that particular musical format basically. So that's the reason probably they are repeated. But if you see this, I think it's from 50 Shades Freed, Heaven, the song Heaven. I think it's
Yeah, Julia
Julia
Matthews.
Williams.
It's one of my favorite songs. Yeah,
I love that song. And if you see that song is more of a poem.
exactly.
If you give it the thought, yes. So there's not much difference between
There are a
the
lot of Hindi
poems
songs
and songs.
also, which are apparently poems, which have been converted into a song.
Now,
So
if you see the poets like Gulzar and Javed Akhtar, like these poets are like too good with their poems. But if you see they write lyrics. So what are they basically doing? They are converting their poems into songs, right?
right,
They are just adding a what do you call a proper musical form. Like they are giving a proper musical form to it, and just they are converting their poems into songs. Because I don't think you have any another like I have not personally written any song as such with the mindset of a song basically because but there was this one guy who was my friend and he's a guitarist and
okay.
he is into composing and one fine day he just read that Simmering Desires and he was like, after reading this I really wanted to give it a tune. So I think there is not much difference between a song and a poem because since he said that, I was like, "Are you sure?" Because it's a poem, it's not a song. And he was like, "No, I can give it a tune, and it'll need a little bit of a repetition because since it's a song. But other than that, I can give it a tune." So that's the answer to your question. I guess there's not much difference between
Yeah,
songs
because a
and
lot of times when I've heard
poems.
songs, I mean, there is a simile there is a repetition there is a hyperbole there. I mean,
Yes.
everything that fits in a poetry fits in a song. So, I mean, the chances of you being a poet and being a songwriter as well is like
The
pretty
chances are
similar.
quite high.
Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very high that way. So,
But
yeah.
I think the songs are quite lengthier than poems because songs you have to write at least 6 to 7 stanzas or go about writing for at least 25 lines, if it has to be a very considerable
But even
song,
Shakespeare
if you're
has
talking
written
about.
some songs that are really, I mean, some poems are really, really long. I mean, they go down to pages and pages. So,
Yeah, so that is a narrative form of a poem.
right.
So when you write a particular story into a poem, then it comes into the narrative. It's a narrative type of a poem. So yeah, that's about it. So there's not much difference between a song and a poem as such. Like we were talking about the poem,
Right.
the song Heaven. If
Yeah.
you see that particular song, it is more of a poem, and it is not a small one. It is quite big. It is
Yeah.
almost, it runs down for 20-25 lines, I guess, that particular song. So yeah,
Nice
songs are
songs.
a bit lengthier. It goes into the narrative part of it more, rather than poems. Poems you can actually cut down it into short. There are poems that are very short also, and yeah, so that's it. That's about it. So no questions from Rohan as well. Hello.
I said there are no questions. It's just me right now. So with a lot of questions
Okay.
probably about songs and poems, and
Okay.
that's it.
Okay. So that's it from my end, Shraddha. I think you can talk about the
Yeah,
upcoming
I
workshops then.
okay. So just quickly, we have another workshop that's coming up the next week. That is on the ABCD of storytelling. So if y'all are here, please do attend. Please do register on skillwise.pro, and we would love to see you for the next workshop. If you want to learn about power dressing, do attend that as well. And we have a lot more on our website, so do definitely check us out. Could you go next? We all we also have a lot of courses that is coming out. We have a digital marketing course that is going to be live on the 31st of October. So yeah, like let's make Halloween plans with learning something really interesting instead of going and scaring people this year. Scare people with your knowledge this year. So
Yeah, that's way scarier, Shraddha. That's way scarier. Scaring people with
yeah,
your knowledge is scary. People don't talk if you talk about
definitely.
knowledge.
Yeah, so scare people with knowledge. We also have something on power dressing for men and women on our website as a course. Also, we have a lot of content marketing courses, so do definitely go check us out, and it'll be great, right? I,
Talk about.
I think that's it. We're done. That's all. That's
Okay.
all for the day. So yeah, thank you everybody for attending the workshop. Um, where is it? Where is everybody? Thank you so much for attending. If you're done, you can leave. I mean, we're good. I can't.